Hey everybody, John Ploskina here, and I just wanted to mention real quick the success that I've had with my own little version of the Paleo Diet, which I highly recommend. Now, if you don't know anything about the Paleo Diet, I believe, as do many others in the manosphere, that this is the best way to maintain your health, especially if you're feeling like you are let down by the modern world. If you feel like you don't have enough energy, if you feel like you're depressed all the time. Well, one of the stories that I want to talk about today on Seeing Through the Media is there's another study that shows that fast food and processed food affect your brain. And this study actually uses the term brain damage. Fast food actually causes brain damage. And I believe it because you've probably seen on my blog or on older episodes of my YouTube channel that I used to be overweight. And I actually suffer from a minor autism spectrum disorder. Asperger's kind of runs in my family, and my son was diagnosed AFA. And I found that diet contributes a lot to my focus and my son's focus, and it's a constant fight to get him away from junk food. And for me, it's a constant fight to see, well, what do I even want to eat? And so, real quick, here's a great recipe. I just grilled up some green peppers, some shrimp, some zucchini, and I've got something tricky. I've got some potatoes on the side, some golden potatoes that I have to cook them for a long time with some butter, some onions, and just let this sit and checking it constantly with a fork until it's tender and ready to eat. This is relatively low carb. You can skip the potatoes if you want to go totally low carb, but I'm not really trying to lose weight at the moment. I'm in a relatively healthy weight. I'm trying to build muscle a little bit, and I like potatoes, so it helps to keep me interested a little bit. This replaces like French fries or whatever for me. But welcome to Seeing Through the Media. Let's see what else there is in the news that's worth talking about. So I'm just getting some grocery shopping done now that dinner's over, and of course what I've seen in the news is that there's been another mass shooting, and this one of course was at a Walmart. Now there was actually a mass shooting at a Walmart near my house last month, and I didn't see that making any national news headlines. The only reason why I knew that it happened at all was because an employee of the Walmart happened to mention it to me while he was helping me out to my car with something. Now, it's interesting to me that one Walmart mass shooting is a national news story that's all over the place, and another Walmart mass shooting is just sort of forgotten about. Well, the one that happened the last today or yesterday, depending on when I finished editing this and uploading it, the perpetrator was white and had a political motivation related to throwing illegal immigrants out of the country, and the media is, of course, racing to tie that into the Trump campaign, whereas the shooting that took place at my local Walmart, the perpetrators were African American, and it seems more of like a typical domestic or crime-related mass shooting. So most people who would try to analyze the difference between these two news stories would probably focus on either the racial angle or the political angle. And certainly those differences are important if what you're focusing on is the individual incidents and trying to understand them. But I actually think that there's probably more of a relationship between two crimes like this than you might think. And that's regardless of what spin the press wants to put on it, and it just depends on which flavor of it, if it bleeds, it leads, the press is operating on a given day. I think that the core problem that results in things like mass shootings is similar to actually something I saw on Red Letter Media, where they were talking about how watching the reactions of people at Comic-Con, they want to stop saying the phrase man-child and basically just referring to most adults as children because of how excited adults get about things like Marvel movies. And it's interesting because a Marvel movie, of course, it gives you an escape from real life, an escape into something higher than yourself in a way. If you don't believe in God, if you don't have any faith in the government or these other institutions, then the belief in a superhero or something may help to give you something to replace the belief in a higher power like God or like the country that you live in. You could replace maybe nationalism or an interest in current events generally with an interest in superheroes, the way that you might replace that with religion if you were into that kind of thing. And that might sound silly, but you have to remember that religion originated, we think, with these lifestyle cults that sprung up, and organized religions evolved from things like the worship of Zeus or the worship of Hercules, where there were lifestyle cults that formed around these godlike figures, and then you were supposed to imitate them in your daily life. Or I tend to come from the tradition of philosophy rather than religion, so I would follow somebody like Socrates or Pythagoras or Diogenes. Also, people who started lifestyle cults, they took on students and they discussed the news of the day and philosophical issues, and they offered an alternative to worshiping the gods that were available to religious worshipers. So we see the same kind of dynamics today, and what I find amusing, you will often hear comic books and comic book movies referred to as our mythology. You know, Batman is a mythological figure to most people, and that's actually a great observation. Batman, to me, is sort of like Hercules. He's a figure that isn't necessarily overtly religious, but he gives you somebody to imitate in your daily life, and I actually do that with my son, Saul. I often tell him to be like Bruce Wayne in the way that Bruce Wayne approaches solving problems and dealing with conflict, because Bruce Wayne doesn't have superpowers. He tries to solve problems first diplomatically, and second with minimal amounts of violence, because if he just rushes in to try and fight a supervillain who has magic powers or super strength or something like that, he's going to get his ass kicked pretty bad. So I don't want my son to think like Superman, where Superman can fly in and be an invincible alien and solve every problem. Bruce Wayne has to think everything through. And I said on my blog once that religions are really just legends that help life feel more epic. And I think that comic books and movies definitely fill a similar gap for a lot of people. I know religious people are going to be saddened by that, and I am too, because I certainly wish that people would pay more attention to philosophy and even religion than Marvel movies and related. And I think actually philosophy is sort of like, well, religion evolved. Religion was in many cases mankind's first attempt to solve problems like, where do ethics come from, and why should you try to be a good person instead of a bad one? And even today you hear bad religious arguments like, well, without God, without religion, how can you guarantee that people will do the right thing when nobody's looking? And of course religion doesn't guarantee anything like that. Doesn't do anything like that for us at all. At least that's what I would argue as an atheist. But however, I don't think it can be argued that it's a good thing that we have people who essentially worship Disney and Marvel and CNN and Fox News, as opposed to being engaged in religious life or being engaged in a philosophical life. And I do think that when you see things like mass shootings and mass unemployment and mass disengagement with the political process and mass apathy towards current events, mass apathy towards philosophy, these are all related, and it has to do with my documentary Information Ghetto. If you haven't seen that, do consider checking it out. It's about how television and the modern relatively sedentary lifestyle were all sort of put together by what Edward Bernays called the rulers of the mind, or you might hear them referred to as the power elite or the cognitive elite on my show. And or you might hear me referred to as a conspiracy theorist, or you might hear it said that my content is similar to somebody like Alex Jones, which is maybe true depending on how you look at these things. But the point is that above and beyond a mundane everyday existence where you wake up in the morning, you force yourself to go to a job that you probably don't enjoy very much, and then you go home and you race to either watch your favorite television show, or you race to see a new movie that's just coming out, or something that just popped up on Netflix. It's important to take time out of your life to look for something bigger than yourself, and there's small ways that you can improve your life. Like at the beginning of this video, I talked about the Paleo Diet, and I gave you a little recipe that I'm working on. And if you find yourself trapped in a rut where you mostly care about Marvel movies and things that are on Red Letter Media, try my channel as an alternative, or try Alex Jones. You have to go to his website, Infowars.com, or maybe try James Corbett. He hasn't been totally banned yet. Or go to the Young Turks or the Huffington Post, and make sure you spend some time out of your day paying attention to what's actually going on in the world. But, all right, I got to get home with my groceries, but thanks for taking some time out of your day to spend with me anyway. It's a harsh world out there, my friends, so please keep thinking. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this content. And I recently redesigned my website, so it's easier to find things like the best blog articles that I've written, the best YouTube videos that I've done, and of course, there's a whole music section with an overview of the decade and a half that I've spent as part of the Pittsburgh music scene, and about, I'd say I probably had about half a dozen bands that actually made it to this stage. I've been part of the release of 2 full-length albums, 1 solo record, 1 solo EP, solo albums and singles related to bands that I've been in, and I've been in some stage shows and stuff like that too. So feel free to check out my website, www.johnploskina.com, if you're curious about stuff like that. But otherwise, we'll talk to you again sometime soon.